Hi, welcome to this video. This is a continuation of the C# beginner series. In our last video, we looked at conversion of data types in C#. In case you didn't watch that, I strongly encourage you to watch the previous video before continuing with this video. In this video, we'll be looking at what console is. So, the console is just like an application that allows input and output for streaming data. In console in C#, we have a way to write to the console and to get data from the console. So you can push data to the console. That is what we call writing to the console, and we can read from the console. That is when you want to get data from the console. To write to the console, we use the Console.Write or Console.WriteLiine. While to read from the console, we could read with the read key, or the Console.Read or the Console.ReadLine. And each of these have what they imply. Let's look at an example. So here, let's say we have our Console.WriteLine, which we have seen me use severally, so some random text, and I could console log this, and that's fine. The Console.WriteLine accepts different. I could use, for example, Console.WriteLine. I could put an integer value there, for example, and that also works fine. It takes that in and it displays that for us. So I put some random text first, and then after that it runs 545, console logs 545 for us. So that's Console.WriteLine. But we have another we call Console.Write. So Console.Write. And let's say we another text here. And when we run this, you will not see any difference per se in the way they show. So you see, it doesn't look as if there's a difference. But the difference now comes in. Let's say I decide that I want to Console.Write here, and I say another Console.Write. And if I run this is where we see the implication. You see, when we ran Console.WriteLine here, this was another Console.WriteLine. When we run Console.Write, you see the first text I wrote was another text here. And you see the next text continues immediately after. That is because when you use Console.Write, it writes to the console and the cursor remains on that line. So, or at that same point at the end of this text. So for example, when this did Console.Write, what it does is when it writes another type here, the cursor remains here at this particular place. That's where the cursor will be on our console. But when we use Console.WriteLine, what this does, after it has finished printing or writing the text on the console, it goes to the next line automatically. That is why when we look at it, you see that when we wrote some random text, when it wrote it, the cursor moved to the next line. That was why when we console log the next one again, it wrote it on the next line. But because that was also .WriteLine, it moved the cursor to the next line. And then when we now write another text here, because it was Console.Write, the cursor will remain after the E in the here. And so when we try to write to the console again, it will continue from that point. Now, so even if I came here and I change this to Console.WriteLine, we will see a similar behavior. The only exception is that after this another Console.Write, the cursor has been moved down here already. So if I were to console log again now, that text will show in the next line. So basically, that's just the basic difference between console log and Console.WriteLine. So let's say I wanted to write, so let's say I want to do something like A, B, C. So let's just A, and I have B, and let me just have, let's say we have C, and let's say I just want to do something like this. I put a comma here. Oh, sorry. I thought it was a comma I put there. So let's say we have this. When we run this now, you see that A, B, C follows sequential like this. I wanted them on the same line. So that is where you can use Console.Write. But when you want them on different lines, you use the Console.WriteLiine. For the Console.Read, the read key and the read line, what those does is to get input from the console. So let's say we want to get an input from our console. We could use Console.Read key, we could use Console.Read, and we could use Console.ReadLine. And we'll explain what these three mean, the implication of these three. So let me just comment out these first two so that we can see what actually the read key does. So if we run this now, you see after ABC, if I press any key I press, let's say I press 9, immediately I press 9, it returns. So when you use the read keys, when you want to take in just one input and you want it immediately after you get that input without having to press enter, it will return back to your program. That is where you use the read key. Where you use the Console.Read is, so if I comment this now and I run this, so we just have the Console.Read. Now in Console.Read, I could put in, you see, I press in different things and it accepts all of them. Console.Read waits until it gets an enter. So if I press the enter key, that is when the Console.Read comes back. Now, but the difference between the read key and the read, immediately it gets the text and it sees the enter key. It is only at that point the Console.Read will return. But the read key immediately gets any input, no matter what the input is. It could be an alphabet, it could be letter, any keyboard stroke. When it gets any response from the keyboard, immediately it returns. That is the difference between read key and read. But both of them only work for one particular character. So they only take in one character. While the Console.ReadLine is to take a bunch of characters. So let me use an example here that will clarify that. So I will have, this is console. Don't worry about what I want to write here. So let's check this out with an example here. So let's say I have the console key info. I have, don't worry about that for now. Just know that we want to use that. And then let's say I have let's have an int read, let's call it read. And then let's have here a string. We'll call it str. So what happens here is, when you use the read key, what it returns to you is a console key info. That is just a struct. So you don't need to really worry about this, but just know that it returns the key and the properties of those keys. When you use a Console.Read, it returns the integer equivalent of any character. So for example, 0 is 48. 0 as a number is 48 as, 0 as a character is 48 as an integer. So what Console.Read returns is an integer. So you see the next character from the input string is what it will return. And then lastly, Console.ReadLine returns a string. So that is what Console.ReadLine will return back for us. So if I run this, so I will just put some breakpoints here. Now, I know I have not used a breakpoint before now, so let me explain what that is. Breakpoints in C#, or I think in many programming languages, is just a way to look through what my program is doing. When I want to see how my program is flowing, I could use a breakpoint. So when I run this now, my console will show some random text. I told it to write 545 and it wrote 545. I told it to do .write, and it wrote ABC with my instruction. Now, remember that the read key is trying to read this key now. So any stroke of the keyboard I press, let's say I press letter P, small letter P. If I come here and I look into what key holds, you see it holds the key that was pressed was P. It has the key car, which it just tells you the equivalent in integer, which is P, small letter P in is 112. Now, you see at this point, when I press continue, it goes back to the program and it's saying, because at that line, I'm saying I want to read what is in the console. So remember, it is only one character, but even though I press 7, for example, it will not return like the key, like the read key, sorry, until I have pressed enter. And when I press enter, if I show what is there, it's 55. So 7 will be 55 since 48 is 0. You know, 48 plus 7 definitely will be 55. So 7 will be 55 as an integer. So you see, that's why we have it here as an integer 55. The value of our read is 55. So if I go ahead to run this, we will not be able to see the end because that is the end of my code. So we have this. Let's have the read line here just to keep it in check. And let's have our breakpoint here. But I have to remove this because I don't want to put a breakpoint for all of this. So if I run this now and we come here, it's actually expecting data. So if I say I am a free text from here on and I press enter, if you come and look at what our string str here is, it's exactly the text I placed in the console. So that is what the read line. The read line reads all characters that I have typed before pressing enter. That's basically what the read line does. Whereas the read will only return the first character. So for example, if I did Console.Read for this particular text on console, all that will be returned is this capital letter I. It will ignore every other thing and return only the capital letter I. So that's important to note. Now, so let's have a small application here. So let's say all it asks is input your name here. And what I'll be waiting for now is, you know, name, and I can call it Console.WriteLiine. So what happens here is it is asking input your name, and then it's going to be expecting me to put in my name there. So all I could just do here is now to come and say, let's say I want to display that name, whatever name that was put, and I could say my name is my name. So I expect it to show my name is whatever name I put here. So if I go ahead and run this here, I said the program is saying input your name here, and I say okay, S solution, and I press enter. My program runs and said my name is S solution. So here we have a simple program that actually takes in user input from the console, and then it writes it to the console with an addendum. So it gives us that my name is whatever the name here is. So that's that for Console.Write and Console.WriteLiine and Console.WriteLiine. We also have the write and the read. Now, I want us to do a little exercise. I want us to have a small calculator. What it does, it only does addition, it only sums up. And what we will just do there is you will take in the input from the user. You will tell the user to put in the first input, and when the person puts the first input, you collect the second input, and then you sum it up, and then you output the sum to the user. That's the quick assignment I want us to go on with. Try that, and I will put a quick solution in the next video. I hope you actually try that, and see you in the next video.